We've been on the island of Koh Phi Phi for a couple of days now, and life was moving at a slow pace, which was fine with us. We found quiet beaches, ate terrific meals, and had met a lot of nice people. Our hut was comfortable and a stone's throw from the beach. This I took advantage of and swam most mornings. Afterwards, I'd sit on the beach and dry off in the warm morning air. Gazing at my surroundings, I'd realize, for the first time that day, how lucky we were to be seeing such places. The area surrounding our accommodation wasn't as tranquil as on Koh Phangan, but it was close. It was strange the way the huts were aligned in rows. It kinda looked like a tourist farm, but what did we care? The area was beautiful and relaxing. The place had a porch with a table and chairs, and many an evening was spent reading and writing. It had everything, even a cat that had adopted us for the duration of our stay. Every evening we'd been here, we heard cheers coming from the trees behind our hut. One day I decided to investigate. I found a soccer tournament going on. Teams came over from the mainland and other islands. With them came their supporters. It turned out to be a good match, and it was fun to see the crowd get into the game.
Everywhere here. Everywhere.
In Thailand, there are heaps of stray cats. On Koh Phi Phi, it was no different. I learned quick enough that though friendly to me, they only just tolerated each other. There were also many chickens and cockerels around. You didn't always see them, but you always heard them, especially come sunrise. It was nice to see them with the chicks for a change. Well worth the effort was the walk up to the viewpoint in the middle of the island. Besides giving you a sense of how the island was laid out, you could see the striking color variations between the island's deep and shallow waters. Its views were unsurpassed. Sort of lost yourself looking around. Here we met Noi, the man who runs the restaurant and tends to its garden. He was a friendly guy who was keen to learn English. He said that achieving this goal would get him a better job up in Bangkok. He asked me to help him with a letter he'd received from a Western tourist he'd befriended. Before leaving, Noi presented me with the picture he'd taken of the sunset. I'll always remember his friendliness and hospitality, and admire his spirit. After dinner that evening, we took a walk on the beach and enjoyed the sunset ourselves. We were in for a spectacular show of color. We sat ourselves down and took it all in, and so we spent our time enjoying the beauty of Kopipi. Turning to the mainland, we hung out for a few days in Krabi. It was a good base to use for checking out other places. The markets were colorful and interesting, with heaps going on. Because of the constant ebb and flow of motorbike traffic, we people watched for ages. There was loads of fruit and veg available, most of which we'd tried, especially those which were to be peeled. You didn't want to eat anything that was unwashed. It was better to play it safe. Some booths sold what looked to be sickly sweet things meant for dessert. I didn't mind giving those a pass. There were all kinds of fish for sale, most varieties being dried. They were fun to look at. We found the evening market to be the best place for dinner. The huge variety of food made return visits a necessity. Thai food is a personal favorite. Sometimes cool and tangy, sometimes fiery hot, but always an enjoyable combination of fresh ingredients and spices. Trying unusual or unidentifiable dishes was fun, but kinda like playing Russian roulette. Being to one's liking wasn't the main issue, but how it would affect your general health was. Consequently, we played it safe most of the time and ate what seemed popular. Dishes that, if already prepared, hadn't been sitting around too long. Thai omelets and banana pancakes became favorites, as was corn on the cob. For sure, the hardest thing about coming here was deciding just what we were going to eat, especially with every other vendor selling fish. The barbecue sure looked good. From Krabi, we did a day trip north to Phenga Bay. It was to be one of those days when the best laid plans just didn't pan out. First, the bus we were to catch north was late. But that was really no big deal. Except that now we had a 3-hour wait to catch the boat that would give us a tour. Then the heavens opened, and the monsoon rains delayed things even longer. Eventually yielding after a while. That was okay. It was amazing to watch. Finally, we were on the long-tail boat that was to take us around the bay and its sights. Only, it wouldn't start. The driver had cast off the dock, either having faith that his motor would fire up, or to keep his passengers from going elsewhere. It didn't work. After about 15 or 20 minutes, he stopped trying and flagged down another boat. We were transferred to it and soon got underway. This was all taken in stride because we had no schedule to keep, and getting there was becoming quite the adventure. The dramatic limestone formations were incredible. Covered with dense vegetation, they rose out of the bay against the monsoon clouds. A more dramatic place we couldn't hope for. Along the way, we stopped for fuel at this Muslim fishing village. Unfortunately, we weren't to have the chance to explore. We didn't even know about the village. We learned later that we could have taken accommodation there, had we prearranged it. It sure looked intriguing, and I'd have loved to have gotten off and checked it out. You can't do everything. The bay was used as a setting for the James Bond film, Man with the Golden Gun. When we continued on, we eventually landed on the island used as the hideout for the villain Scaramanga. For tourists, it's referred to as James Bond Island. Because of the weather and time of day, the t-shirt sellers had packed it in. This was good news for us, as they would have seemed an intrusion on the beauty of the place. We were able to wander about for a half hour before we were to meet at the boat for the return journey. On the journey back, the driver brought us into caves and tunnels which had eroded and been carved out by the sea. After emerging from one tunnel, we spied this lizard on the far shore. It would have been fun to have gotten a closer look. Little did I know that in a few weeks' time, I'd surprise one just as large and scare the daylights out of the both of us. Well, myself at least. We did return to Krabi that night. Not without a hitch, though. The bus driver didn't let us off at our stop, and when he did, a half hour later, we had to hitch back in the dark. Though it had started to rain heavily, a Muslim gentleman stopped and picked us up. He stopped briefly at a mosque on the way and got his friend who spoke English. When we arrived in Krabi, he stopped at the night market and bought us a cup of coffee. A memorable ending to a brilliant day. Today we're going to Railay, a mainland beach accessible only by boat. Overdeveloped in terms of the amount of tourist accommodation, it still retained a lot of its wild charm. First day there, an Australian guy told me about an excellent hike that few tourists seem to have heard of. It was to a hidden lagoon in one of the many limestone formations. The path to it rose sharply and was really slippery due to rain the night before. After 10 minutes of doing 3 steps forward and 2 back, the path eventually leveled out. Then began its descent.
Spider.
Through beautiful scenery, I carefully made my way, stopping often to gawk and listen to my surroundings. It was so quiet here. Naturally, I started taking heaps of pictures. These South African guys passed me on the trail. They were looking for the lagoon as well. Some of the way was rough. Taking it slow was the only way. Unless you were into being rescued. At one point you had to climb through a hole to continue on down. Or up, for that matter. This place was a hoot. The lagoon was truly a jewel in one magnificent setting.
Apparently these people are just doing
The sheer walls rose at least 150 feet from the water and were linked to the sea by subterranean caves. The water was fresh and good for a swim to wash off the trail mud. I'd worn my boots to hike here, their first time out of my pack in months. Because I didn't have my sandals, it took ages getting into and out of the water, the surrounding rocks being very rough and jagged. I lost track of time and remembered I was to meet Siobhan on the beach in an hour. So I took one last long look around before leaving this incredible place. We would end up spending several days on Riley relaxing. The beaches were beautiful and the swimming excellent in its warm, sheltered waters. With the time on our 1-month visa running short, we decided to pack up and head south to Trang. We had a nice surprise in store for us, as we were to arrive in time to see the start of the Vegetarian Festival celebrations. This annual event is very colorful and quite a dramatic public display. It's held during the first 9 days of the Chinese calendar's 9th lunar month. The 9-day period occurs in late September and early October. During the 9-day festival, certain participants become vehicles for their emperor gods. The devotees, or Ma Song as they're known, are people whom the gods enter during the festival. They manifest supernatural powers and perform self-tortures in order to shift evil from individuals onto themselves and to bring the community good luck. The Ma Song fall into two categories. People who, having a feeling of impending doom, want to become gods to extend their lives, and people specially chosen by the gods for their moral qualities. Each incarnation had several attendants, whose purpose, it seemed, was to make them comfortable. Keeping them cool was very important. Those attendants made sure things were just right. Other highlights of the festival we'd heard about included ritual bridge crossings, the walking on hot beds of coals, and the climbing of knife ladders. These acts Siobhan and I did not witness. and I didn't really even want to think about that knife ladder. Ideas regarding the festival's beginnings are varied. One says it originated in southeastern China, coming to Thailand in 1825. It arrived with a number of Chinese who came to work in the tin mines to the north in Phuket. As the story goes, a Chinese drama troupe became vegetarians, believing that in doing so, they would purify their bodies and minds. This would help make them immune to the malaria that was prevalent at the time. Another story says the changing of diet was to gain merit by saving animals from being killed for food. Throughout the festival, fireworks explode and drums are sounded. It's thought that the louder they are, the better, because the noise drives away the evil spirits. Amid the chaos of firecrackers, the marchers hurriedly left the staging area. Outside, the parade route would wind through the neighborhood we were staying in. On our street, each shopkeeper had a table set up with many offerings: fruit, flowers, water, incense. The traffic slowed, and there was an electric, festive atmosphere. It seemed only fitting when this guy came by. Everyone waited and grew more anxious with each passing moment. The participants, still in a state of trance, began to arrive. As these incarnations made their rounds, they performed a routine of ritualized rites. With a piece of palm frond, they dipped it in what seemed to be holy water and blessed the shop and its inhabitants. Some even lit incense. There's going to be more fireworks, and I couldn't wait for these to be lit. Luckily, I had a pair of earplugs in my pack. Some of the male masong, while stopping by an offering table, would add a piece of fruit to one end of their skewers. Whether it was a show of bravado or just to add more decoration to their costumes, I wasn't quite sure. As the deities came by, certain individuals got more attention than others, perhaps due to an illness or a desire for good fortune. Then they set about giving away the gifts that were arranged on the tables. A variety of fruit and beautiful, fragrant flowers were in abundance. When a gift is received, it is said to be good luck. I was fortunate enough to have been given these flowers. By the end of the evening, Siobhan and I had accumulated assorted flower chains, prayer beads, bracelets, amulets, and several pieces of fruit. We felt quite fortunate indeed. As time went on, the dragons showed up with their entourage. It looked like they were there to help drive away the evil spirits. It was special to see just how much this festival meant to some of the devout followers, especially this lady. And donations were given in some cases. Participants must follow the 10 commitments for the vegetarian festival. These include cleanliness of body and mind, abstaining from meat, sex, and alcohol, the wearing of white clothing, the stipulation that pregnant or menstruating women and people in mourning cannot attend any ritual. Also, kitchen utensils cannot be shared with non-participants. By following these guidelines, it is thought that the festival thus promotes good hygiene, brightness, and inner peace. After the dragon passed, the throne bearers would enter each establishment and carry the spirits out to be dispatched by the firecrackers. And though well orchestrated, I was glad I wasn't carrying that little throne. Systematically, this went on down the street and carried on into the night. The scene became quite frantic toward the end. We ended up back at our hotel's restaurant to see everyone come by. Later, after all the excitement was over and the revelers had departed, our proprietor burned the leftover decorations. Somehow a fitting end for so bizarre a day.
After they go by, they burn everything.